So what if you could boost your immediate sales close rate by a massive 43%?
It's a huge number.
It is. And not by bringing in some new sales guru or, retraining your entire team, but just by changing the time of day your team schedules a meeting.
It sounds almost too simple to be real, but that percentage is backed by one of the most incredible sets of data we have ever come across.
And that's exactly the high-impact insight we're digging into today. We're unpacking the first sales secret from the research of the sales experts.
Right.
And this is just, it's critical for any sales leaders or executives who are really focused on optimizing their team's performance for real sales success.
Our mission here is to get past the theory. We're looking at hard, cold data that's been compiled for decades. I'm talking about lessons from 23,806 sales pitches.
23,000.
All meticulously logged since 1989 across something like 50,000 journal pages. And this tracks everything: client, value, result, and, crucially, the long-term outcome. We want to find that exact window where a buyer is mentally ready to say yes.
Okay, let's just pause on that research base for a second. That level of structured data is, it's something most companies can only dream of having.
It really is.
The fact that they tracked not just the immediate result, but the long-term relationship, that lets us look past a single transaction and see the real strategic impact of timing.
And when you actually filter through all that data, the pattern that emerges isn't really about the industry or the size of the deal. It's all about human psychology. It's about the clock and the calendar.
So you're saying timing can actually beat talent?
In situations where the buyer's mental energy is the bottleneck, the data says yes. Timing can be a more powerful lever than raw sales talent.
And nothing shows that better than the difference between the morning and the afternoon. This is the stat that should make every single sales ops team stop what they're doing.
The difference is absolutely staggering. When we look at all those pitches, the ones delivered in the morning had a 43% higher chance of closing immediately. Immediately, compared to any pitch delivered after lunch. This isn't some small statistical quirk. This is proof that the moment your team takes that lunch break, their odds of closing new business drop by nearly half.
That's mind-blowing amount of revenue left on the table.
Yeah.
Because a meeting was at 2 p.m. instead of, say, 10 a.m. Did the data get any more specific about that morning window? Is there a sweet spot?
It did, and this is where it gets really surgical. The data shows the true peak is early. So pitches delivered specifically before 11 a.m. had a 26% higher close rate than the ones squeezed in between 11 and lunchtime.
Wow.
So that little window, maybe 9:30 to 10:45 a.m., that's pure jet fuel for your pipeline.
So the idea isn't just get it done in the morning. It's about catching the buyer at their absolute cognitive peak before they've been worn down by dozens of other decisions.
Precisely. You have to prioritize that early slot for new complex pitches. But what's also interesting is what this tells us about the quality of the close. We know it's faster, but was it a better decision in the long run?
That's the multi-million-dollar question, isn't it? And the data does suggest a correlation. Those morning deals also tended to have slightly better retention rates, which suggests the decision wasn't just fast, it was made with more focus, less buyer's remorse later.
Fascinating. So let's shift from the clock to the calendar. The weekly pattern is just as decisive. Monday through Wednesday, those are your powerhouse days.
Right. Consistent, strong results, but then the body drops out. What happens on Thursday?
You see a really sharp decline. On Thursdays, close rates dropped by 23% compared to that early week average.
23%.
And on Friday, it gets worse. On Fridays, the close rates just plummeted by a massive 33%.
A third. A third of your success just vanishes because the meeting slipped to Friday. I know the source also looked at existing accounts. Was it just as bad for, say, repeat orders?
Thankfully, no. The decline was still there. You could see the fatigue, but the drop was about 60% lower for repeat business.
Okay, that distinction is critical.
It is. It confirms that new business, which requires the most cognitive energy from the buyer, is incredibly sensitive to timing. Repeat business, which is built on trust, is more resilient.
So we've established the when. Morning is dominant, early week is dominant. But for this to be so universal, there must be some deep psychological reason for it. What is going on in the buyer's mind?
This is where we connect the sales data directly to behavioral science. And the concept that explains all of this is called decision fatigue.
Right. Let's break that down. We all know what physical fatigue feels like, but mental energy. It's a bit harder to grasp.
Think of the buyer's mind like a battery on a phone. Every single choice they make all day, from what to eat for lunch to navigating a tough internal meeting drains that battery a little bit.
So their capacity for high-level thinking is a finite resource.
Exactly. And by the time your beautifully crafted pitch lands at 3 p.m., even if they love it, their brain defaults to the path of least resistance, which means saying no or let me think about it, which is usually just a soft no. You're not being rejected because your product is bad. You're being rejected because the buyer is mentally exhausted.
And to really drive this point home, the research used an example that I found genuinely shocking. It wasn't even from the corporate world. It was about parole hearings.
Yeah, this really shows how severe decision fatigue can be. Studies found that judges were far more likely to grant parole in the morning than in the afternoon. The cases were similar, but the judges' mental resources were so depleted later in the day that they just defaulted to the safest choice.
Which is keeping the status quo.
Right.
Rejecting the request.
Exactly. So if a judge's ability to make a life-altering decision is impaired by lunchtime, just imagine a VP of IT weighing a $500,000 contract after a full day of putting out fires.
It's a biological reality you have to schedule around.
And sales teams can actually make this worse. They accelerate the fatigue within the pitch itself. This gets us to what the research calls the choice conundrum.
Too many options just leads to paralysis.
Absolutely. The numbers here are so specific. Offering a buyer 6 options instead of 3 can literally cut your chance of getting a decision in half.
In half. So why is 3 the magic number? What's so bad about 4?
Well, psychologists call it the paradox of choice. With 2 options, a buyer feels limited. With 3, they feel empowered. You have your economy, standard, and premium. But once you add a 4th or 5th, the brain just sees it as extra work. It gets overwhelmed and just defers the decision entirely.
So we have to stop seeing this as just an interesting observation and start operationalizing it. For the executives and leaders listening, how do we actually put this into action?
Right. This has to become a systemic strategy. It's not about reps working harder. It's about management creating a better environment. We've got 3 really clear takeaways.
Okay, let's start with scheduling.
Actionable takeaway number 1. Mandate aggressive scheduling for new business. Sales leaders have to enforce this. New deal pitches, pricing calls, anything high stakes must be booked between 9 and 11 a.m. Period.
But what if a client pushes back? They insist on an afternoon slot because of their calendar.
That's where a manager has to coach the rep. You explain why. You tell them you want them to be fresh and focused for this important decision, and if they absolutely can't move, then you simplify the pitch even further. Maybe you only present one single option.
That makes sense. Protect the morning at all costs. What about the week?
Actionable takeaway number 2. Strategically allocate the week. Monday through Wednesday are for new business. That's it. You reserve Thursday and Friday for lower energy tasks, internal training, account check-ins, pipeline cleanup, maybe pitches for repeat business.
So you're treating your access to a fresh buyer's mind like a critical, non-renewable resource.
You have to. And finally, the third takeaway links back to that choice conundrum.
Actionable takeaway number 3. Simplicity sells. Executives have to coach their teams to structure every proposal with no more than 3 clear, distinct choices. There should be a checkpoint before a proposal goes out the door.
The moment you add a 4th option, you are actively working against the data. You're introducing friction that causes delays.
So this deep dive into the data from the sales experts gives us a really powerful data-backed mandate.
It does.
The core message is just so clear. Morning beats afternoon. Early week beats late week, and fewer choices lead to faster decisions. Sales success isn't just about what you say, it's about when you say it.
It's probably the highest leverage adjustment a sales leader can make this quarter.
We really encourage all sales leaders and executives listening to implement these strategies right away. And to go deeper into this incredible research from the sales experts, you can find more of their insights at thesalesexperts.com.
And just to leave you with one final thought to chew on, if we know that cutting options from 6 down to 3 can double your closure probability, then you have to ask yourself, what other non-essential decisions is your sales process forcing a buyer to make before they even see the pitch?
Like convoluted scheduling tools or too many intake forms.
Exactly. Are you draining their mental energy before the real conversation even begins? Because maximizing sales success means removing every single point of needless cognitive friction. That is the real strategic question for your team this week.